On August 5th, 2024, Behavior announced that the long-awaited Five Nights at Freddy's collaboration would finally be happening in the summer of the following year, aka this year. Regardless of your opinion on it, this is a massive deal for Behavior, as FNaF is one of the biggest horror franchises ever created, and it's still going strong today despite the lore having been put through a blender without the lid on. It's basically what Michael Myers was in the 80s as Freddy Fazbear is to the 2010s. Absolute cinema! Again, until the lore became a mess. This video will be going over my thoughts and predictions on what the FNaF chapter could include, as well as the new player experience, since this chapter will cause DBD to explode in new players like chapters like Resident Evil did. The easiest place to start on a FNaF chapter discussion would be to talk about who the killer of the chapter would be. It's been said to death at this point, but Springtrap would far and away be the best option due to his design, origin story, and popularity in Five Nights at Freddy's. And I'm confident that both the DBD and FNaF communities will create an uproar like no other if Springtrap isn't the killer. As for me personally, I agree Springtrap's the best choice, but I'm also open to characters like Foxy, Vanny, and the daycare attendant, particularly Moon, as killer choices. Additionally, I would love to see the Mimic as a killer, and before you get your torches and pitchforks out, Mimic is absolutely not a great choice for this game. He barely exists outside of the books, and he's quite controversial in the games. The only reason I'd like to see Mimic is because I want to see the community's reaction as I sit down with a bag of popcorn at the ready. The reactions to that would be glorious. Going under the assumption Springtrap will be the killer, I can imagine Springtrap would get a minor redesign to better fit DBD's art style, particularly Afton's remains, since Scott sucked at making human characters back then, which definitely shows later on. While we're on the topic of human anatomy redesigns, Springtrap has potential for a lot of pretty cool skins. Right off the top of my head, I can imagine Springtrap's Toxic and Clown skins from Special Delivery making it as skins. Scraptrap has a very high chance of being a skin with an equally high chance of also getting redesigned. Scraptrap missing his right arm would mean he would either need to be given the arm back, kinda like what they did with Grid's tail to fit Xenomorph's gameplay, or give him entirely new animations which would likely warrant ultra rare skin status. Pre-Springlocked Afton, Into the Pit Spring Bonnie, or if Blumhouse allows it, Movie Afton have legendary potential as well. Pit Spring Bonnie in particular having the potential for getting a visceral rarity and a unique Mori. Moving on from the killer, finding a survivor for the FNaF chapter is actually fairly tricky due to the lack of human characters who appear in the games. There's options such as Vanessa, aging up Gregory or Cassie, utilizing characters like Charlie from the books, or Mike Shit or Mike Schmidt from the movie if Blumhouse is chill. The most likely option though would most likely be creating a DBD original version of either Michael Afton or Henry Emily, two characters who appear in the games who have significant relations to Springtrap but are usually just voices if you don't include Michael's silhouette or pixelated appearance after Ennard goes skinwalker on him in sister location. Out of the two, Henry would definitely be the easier of the two to design since he has appeared in flashbacks in the book series. Assuming we go this route, I don't really see a whole lot of skin potential for either character. Both could potentially get night guard outfits, Henry could get a more casual clothing appearance, and Michael could potentially get a post-Ennard vomiting skin recreated in 3D. For maps, there's a lot of options to choose from, with many suggesting a fully indoor map on one of the pizzerias, Fazbear's Fright, Pizza Sim's location, Circus Baby's rental, or the Pizzaplex. However, I can also see Behavior going the Nostromo route and utilizing a partially indoor, partially outdoor location. The best map to do this on would be Fazbear's Fright, given that the place burns down and Springtrap did survive it, meaning in DBD's lore, the entity could use Springtrap's memory of the remains of Fazbear's Fright to make the map possible. So, yeah, those are my personal theories and thoughts on what the FNaF chapter could include, but what does that mean for the game itself? FNaF being as big as it is means it's going to draw in a shit ton of new players, and unless Behavior screws up big time, whoever the FNaF killer ends up being will more than likely be among the most played killers in the game regardless of balancing, especially if it does end up being Springtrap due to horror icon status alone. Behavior more than likely predicted this would happen, as they're currently working on the long-awaited quality of life changes we've been requesting for a while now. However, even with all these changes, DBD still remains as one of the most beginner-unfriendly games of all time, and I do think this will truly show once this chapter releases. The game's tutorial, to keep it brief, is extremely lackluster for both roles, encouraging bad habits and leaving out a ton of vital information used in everyday gameplay such as looping. Not only this, but DBD requires an absurd amount of time commitment to truly get good at due to the sheer amount of information ranging from killer powers, tiles, items, add-ons, and over 200 plus perks to learn. Some even having mechanics that aren't even covered in the tutorial, such as hexes, scourge hooks, boons, invocations, and more. Not everyone has the time for that. I sure as hell don't. I have a life and other games I have to attend to. Speaking of perks, survivors get a pretty good amount of decent perks to use without having to pay, with a lot of the global ones being pretty good as well. However, killers do not have this luxury, as a lot of the common decent to good perks that are seen often in games are locked behind paywalls, a large Eerie Shard grind, or praying the Shrine of Scams rolls the perk you're looking for. Granted, this isn't as bad as it used to be since the Eerie Shard prices for older characters are being reduced, and Hellraiser leaving the game will make all of Pinhead's perks part of the global pool, but it's still a genuine issue newer killer players will have to deal with. The influx of newer players will also be mixing with people who have been around for a while, which means thanks to the MMR system being what it is, a ton of players, especially survivors, will have their match quality drastically reduced during the first couple weeks of FNaF's release, and maybe even sometime after, while the new players are being exposed to the game for the first time. FNaF is a license I'm very glad is coming to Dead by Daylight. This was the game series that got me into enjoying horror games as much as I do now, with that series and Monstrum being my favorites overall. However, as much as FNaF was a huge get for Behavior thanks to Scott trusting them after being impressed with Xenomorph's translation to DVD, Alien haters take notes. It also comes with a massive amount of issues due to DBD being terribly designed for people new to the game, which can potentially make the massive amount of new players not stick around. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, check out my DVD playlist in the description and let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the FNaF license are and how you'd improve the new player experience. With that in mind, cheers!